of Relatable with Allie Beth Stuckey, which covers culture, news, and more from a conservative Christian perspective. Ana Marie Cox, host of the new podcast, Past Due, Economic Survival in the Age of Trump, with us now. Ladies, good to see both of you. Allie Beth, were you as surprised as I was when I read this?
No, not at all. This comes from Vox, and we've seen this a lot from the left. We saw this with Sarah Sanders. We've seen this with conservative women, of course, even before the Trump administration. It is, when it comes to feminism, it is rules for thee, but not for me. And so they can slander their looks, they can criticize their motherhood, they can go as low as it gets when it comes to their critiques and their criticisms of the women in the Trump administration. But if you level any kind of criticism towards people on their side, all of a sudden that's misogyny.
Ana Marie, it almost reminds me that these hits, like what Larry David said about comedy, if you have to use a curse word, you're not that good at it. It sort of seems like this. If this is what you have against Kristi Noem and Caroline Levitt, God, there's a lot of things that are real to hit them on that you're not that good if you're hitting them on whether or not they're good mothers.
I tend to agree that my bigger problem with Kristi Noem posing in front of people who have been dragged out of the country illegally and without due process is the people behind her that were taken out of the country without due process. The fact that she was posing in front of them, no matter what she was wearing, is kind of gross. But I don't really have a problem with what she was wearing. I do want to say, kind of in defense of the article, is that I don't think it was savagely mocking these women so much as trying to have kind of a aesthetic critique of them. And I think in that one little bit you read, the biggest thing in there that I could say was a criticism or sarcasm or misogyny is pointing out that the Trump administration has policies that the article put kind of, sarcastically would send women back to the kitchen, right? And I don't think that that's precisely true, although we have heard from this administration about, promoting like motherhood, and not just motherhood, but actually having children. They want women to have more children. So there is like something there.
I'm lost as to how that puts to sending women back to the kitchen.
Yeah. And also I think that it's just kind of fancy phrasing. We're talking about semantics here for saying that it's an aesthetic critique and not just slamming them for their looks or for their makeup or for their hairstyle. That's just a sophisticated, more academic way of saying that someone looks bad or looks trashy, which is basically what the article is doing, I think. Now, when it comes to motherhood, of course we want our government to be promoting motherhood. We want them to be promoting having more children in very healthy ways. We need more children. We need more marriage. We need more stable families. We are literally looking at societal
agreed
collapse.
on that, and the bashing rather than celebrating, I think, of women. You talk about Caroline Levitt in terms of the arc, shall we say, of her becoming a mother and a spokesperson, I think is something to celebrate from both sides because it's the way the world should be. I'm interested, though, in this specific thing about Kristi Noem because she has leaned into this in a different way. Right, there is the 4 box of her all in different dress up as she goes around and plays DHS agent or Coast Guard men or pilot or whatever it is. And then Megyn Kelly made this important point. Take a listen.
Just stop trying to glamorize the mission and put yourself in the middle of it as you cosplay ICE agent, which you're not. I can't stand these photo ops, you guys. I think they diminish ICE. They diminish DHS, CPB. She's not an agent. She is an administrative policy person appointed by Trump because she was very loyal to him. Fine.
Allie Beth, that sounds pretty fair to me.
I don't disagree with that at all. And I think that's much more substantive than saying, oh, MAGA women just focus on this kind of like faux representation of femininity. She's basically saying, let's focus on the deportations. Let's focus on getting the bad guys out of here and fewer photo ops. And I would agree with that.
All right. Ana Marie, where does this go? We've seen this huge shift among working class women towards Donald Trump. And I think one of the reasons, and traditional values women towards Donald Trump, church-going women towards Donald Trump, One of the reasons is because of this from the left. How do Democrats reverse that?
Whenever we talk about this, I have to tell you, I don't know. If I knew, I would be making a lot of money in Washington. Like, if I knew how to have the Democrats fix their appeal, like, I would go do that. I wouldn't be talking to you as much as I love talking to you.
Well, thank you.
I do want to say something about the presentation of these women, which is I am against making fun of them. I just want to be very, very clear about that. I'm against making fun of people for what they look like. I'm against making fun of people for the fact that they want to do something gender affirming in their presentation, which is very clear what these women are doing. They are doing a presentation of their gender that, if you don't believe that gender is a binary, fine, there is a spectrum of femininity. And these women are very explicitly going towards an end of that spectrum. And I think that is because we have an administration that wants to forward
I thought
a
this
very
segment was going to go a lot of
view.
places. This was not where, but Allie Beth, Ana Marie, thank you both. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.